Labor's new plans for better tax reporting and enforcement can put an end to the avoidance by the wealth and big business that impoverishes our society, argues Richard Burgon last week. Live on national television, the chairman of the Cayman Islands Stock Exchange labeled the Paradise Papers fake news and called for journalists investigating tax havens to be put in jail. This week a new report showed that the globe's richest 1% owns half of all global wealth. Welcome to a world run for the super rich. Under a Labour government led by Jeremy Corbyn, people like the chairman from the Cayman Islands wouldn't be calling the shots. It's about time that the very richest in society paid their fair share. Tax avoidance and tax evasion hurt our public services and hurt our society. It's immoral and economically damaging. The fat cats, multimillionaires and billionaires who wriggle out of paying their fair share of tax are not role models to be admired. They are people who don't pay their way. They are the epitome of getting something for nothing, the undeserving beneficiaries of a grotesquely unequal society where irresponsible largesse exists alongside low wages, poverty, cash-starved public services, food banks and homelessness. In an article earlier this week, Democratic Senator Bernie Sanders, who has done so much in the U.S. to articulate a new politics of hope in the interests of the 99% rather than the super-rich 1%, put it very clearly. Sanders wrote, "The essence of oligarchy is that the billionaire class is never satisfied with what they have. They want more, more and more, no matter what impact their efforts have on working people, the elderly, children, the sick and the poor. Greed is their religion." While the oligarchs are avoiding their taxes, Trump and his Republican colleagues have been trying to throw tens of millions of Americans off of their health insurance and make massive cuts in education, nutrition assistance and affordable housing. Sanders is right, greed is the religion of the masters of the neoliberal world. And just as a Sanders presidency would have taken action against this immorality, injustice and waste to the economy in the U.S., so the next Labour, Corbyn-led government will take decisive action. Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell and his shadow Treasury team have published a tax transparency and enforcement program. In it, Labour calls for an immediate public inquiry into tax avoidance, the setting up of a specialist tax enforcement unit and the public filing of tax returns for large companies and individuals earning more than £1 million per year. A Labour government wouldn't give public contracts to tax avoiders. People and companies who squirrel away money which rightly belongs to the public purse shouldn't be hoovering up government contracts and trousering public money. The so-called Paradise Papers are yet more evidence that it's time to end the age of a parasitic super-rich not paying their way while often at the same time making money out of the very public sector they won't pay into. Labour's proposal of a rule enshrining in tax law the general principle of anti-avoidance would be a very important step on the road to tax justice. And a government that is for the many, not the few, would put our own house in order. That means strict minimum standards for crown dependencies and overseas territories. The Conservative Party has a long record of protecting the interest of the super-rich tax avoiders and tax evaders, those who shirk their responsibility to the rest of society while lecturing everyone else about their responsibilities. As socialists, we believe that our responsibility to each other runs right through society. When Corbyn is Prime Minister, the super-rich will have no exemption to this duty. More and more people feel that the system is rigged against them and that there's one rule of the super-rich and another rule for everyone else. The Conservative government opposes Labour's efforts to secure real action on tax avoidance and the use of offshore trusts and tax havens. And they've helped feather the nest of their super-rich friends and allies with reductions in capital gains tax and the top rate of income tax while at the same time plunging people into poverty with their cruel and callous approach to universal credit, their introduction of the bedroom tax, their pay freezes and their celebration of a low-wage, casualized economy. The political and moral choice of the Conservatives is to ease the burden of the multimillionaires and billionaires and to increase the pressure on working people and their families. As the new Credit Suisse report on global wealth states, increasing inequality can boost the speed at which new millionaires are created. That is why Sanders was right to say this week, now is the time for people to come together to take on the greed of the oligarchs. We can and must create a global economy that works for all, not just a handful of billionaires. The campaign for a Labour government with Corbyn as Prime Minister is part of that international movement for a different kind of economy that's more just and more humane, an economy that's not only run in the interests of the many not the few but can be increasingly run by the many not the few. We have a great responsibility, and Richard Burgon is also the Shadow Secretary of State for Justice and Shadow Lord Chancellor. Related tags.